I would like to welcome to the show writer for What the Night Leaves Behind, Mr. Rob Sheely. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Stephen. I really appreciate being the inaugural episode of your new podcast.
Absolutely. We couldn't be more excited either. First off, I want to say thank you for allowing us to use your script for this project, as well as thank you for taking the time to listen to our read and the discussion afterward.
It was all my pleasure.
What was it like as the writer listening to your characters and your words come to life?
Oh, so, it's such a mixed feeling. Sometimes I'm just really there with it, and other times the critic's voice pops up, and I go, "Oh, that line doesn't work," or "Oh, did I really do it that way?" or "Oh, I remember that." So it
Absolutely.
is such a mixed experience. But it really captured what I was trying to get. So I'm grateful for that.
Oh, excellent. Do you remember
Mhm.
any specifics for moments that you thought were really on point?
I'm like the very end, the climax.
Of
It's very
course,
tough to pull off. Yeah.
it was, and thank God we had our actors with us, because if it were a bunch
Hmm.
of bunch of us just sitting around doing this, it would not have been nearly as engaging as it was.
Hmm.
Well, let's go back a little bit because I want to know about your life and your journey. So, can you tell me a little bit about your journey as a writer and as a creative in general?
Okay. Well, I spent most of my young life as a playwright, which I think is a really good training ground for film because you have fewer tools to work with, and the tools are focused more on the relationships between human beings. And I
Absolutely.
think a really good screenplay is about the relationship between human beings. And it can be easy to get distracted because you can throw any visual you want. You can have a car chase anytime you want, but it helps to 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 understand the basics, because it all comes out of the ancient Greeks and the unities and unity of theme, meaning that you're really trying to tell one story, and what you begin with, you have to finish. And and especially like at your climax, you better be answering the questions that you placed in the reader's or the viewer's mind early on. And you better not pull anything out of your hat at the last minute that isn't, that they didn't see you put in your hat
Of course.
to,
You
to
mentioned
mix
the
a metaphor.
Greeks.
Yeah.
Do you think back to those ancient tragedies a lot in your work?
I just studied it. I don't think about that when I'm writing. That was just my training ground. That was my understanding. And in fact, the first earlier draft of the screenplay, I tried to preserve the unities. It all took place in more or less real time. It all took place in one night.
Ah, very interesting.
So yeah, but in the end, there was no room to develop a relationship between Frank and Sarah, and so I had to just sacrifice that goal of wanting to have it. It becomes more of a stunt than having everything happen in real time, and it's not worth it if it's going to sacrifice the characters.
Definitely. It would definitely feel more of a gimmick than a structural piece that benefited this story if it takes
Mhm.
away from the characters that we have.
Right.
How did you make the leap from playwright to now screenwriting?
I just got into it. Some of it was I needed to make a living, so I got into training videos and learned some of the technical stuff from there. And I just fell in love with it because, to be honest, playwriting is an ancient art form. It's not really there's not that much call for it in the world anymore. And I was looking, and while it's such a nice starting point, I also do, I grew up watching TV. I grew up watching movies. They were my first love.
Definitely. Do any of those early TVs or movies stand out as something that inspired you to go down this path?
Well, I'd have to say, no surprise here, Groundhog Day.
Excellent, definitely. We saw some similarities here, didn't we?
Right. Groundhog Day is like almost the perfect comedy in again almost in that Greek sense in that it usually when I watch an absurd comedy I go, as a writer I go, well, I would have done this or I would have done that. If I were that character, I would have done this. In this case, they exhausted all the possibilities. It felt like, oh, he kills himself again and again and again. That's something interesting to do. That's, yeah, I can see why he would want to do that. And then he becomes selfish. And they just really they stuck with their gimmick and until it stopped seeming like a gimmick. They stuck with a central premise and they just worked it out and worked it out and worked it out. So I admire that tremendously.
Excellent.
And they used it to develop characters that were empathetic.
Oh, absolutely. By the end of that movie, he's turned from the guy that everyone hates to suddenly the guy that everyone's praising.
Right, right.
You mentioned how this first draft for What the Night Leaves Behind was only a single night in basically a 90-minute stretch, or was it, you said real
Right.
time?
Yeah. So I mean, real time in the fact in that it even with it taking place in two separate timelines, Ben would keep coming back, but the present day took place in one night.
Mm. So then, what was that like bouncing back and forth between the two?
There was no premise that he came when he came, so there was none of the he comes once a night.
I see. So we saw him come, 4 or 5 times in a single night.
Right.
I see. What other big differences were there with the very first draft?
Frank died in the
Oh,
Frank was not there. Sarah was older. She was and her mother was dead. It was like I'm almost embarrassed to talk about the early draft. The premise that I had was that the repeating tragedy and then the final working out of it. But I had I had ghost hunters and all of that claptrap going on. I really had to purge over a number of drafts. I had to purge that whole stuff out, and then just think back and say, and the basic core premise is the conversation should happen between the people. It shouldn't be remembering the dead Frank or I can't talk to my mom because she's not here anymore, so I'm going to have to talk to her memory. So when I got the idea, no, 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 her mom is still alive. And oh my God, Frank is still alive. He didn't die that night. And then the whole idea, well, then he would be living in this house and the whole gothic feel of it. I got shivers thinking, yeah, that I love that visual. I want to see this man who is like Miss Havisham um, from Charles Dickens, who is sitting in the past in this rotten old house, just not able to let go.
very cool. And so it seems like that revelation really came at the right time to bring it in. I'm curious what the plot was for the very early draft when Frank wasn't alive. Did Sarah still come to the house to seek out her cousin?
She came. No, she came. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, she came and to see this house, and she had a medium with her and a scientific ghostbuster with her,
Ah,
and they were like trying to cleanse the house so they could sell it and stuff like this. Just it was it
very
was
different.
very very different and not very good.
Well, every change that you've mentioned seems to have brought it to a better place to where it is now. That's the writing process, isn't it?
Right, right. When it works, that's the writing process. Yeah.
Did you
Sometimes you just
work?
have to write it badly before you can write it well.
Absolutely. Did you work with any screenwriting partners, or did you take any notes from competitions?
I have a close friend who we did theater together, and she's become my confidant, and so I would send drafts to her, and we would bounce ideas off each other. And then yes, in um, I think I got that note about saying that the story should take place over multiple nights and give time to develop a relationship. That came from a competition.
Very cool.
And when I saw that, I said, "Oh my gosh, that is so right." And but that's the latest draft, so that not that when I get in the feedback that came from your discussion after this, after the reading, when they talk about the relationship between Frank and Sarah, perhaps needing to grow some more, I'm not surprised, because that's the newest part of the script.
Hmm. How long have you been writing through this? You mentioned to me it was quite some time.
Yeah, this thing is probably 5 or 6 years old.
Wow. Very in depth. And how many drafts have you done over that time?
I'd say 10 or 12.
Wow, excellent. Well, the progress is very clear to us.
Thank you.
Um, was there any inspiration for that original idea that you had, or any big moment that had come since then, like keeping Frank alive, or just you mentioned the old decrepit house and this hermit? What was there a spark that caused any of this? Can you remember that?
The spark early on was, my ambition in the beginning was, I wanted to write a contained movie that didn't feel contained. So the idea was, oh, it'll take place in two timelines in the same place, so there'll be some visual interest between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. It was purely a technical inspiration at the very beginning. That would be interesting. Wouldn't that be interesting? And then what would be going on? Oh, what if there was a ghost that was coming in the past, so we get to see that scene acted out again, but the present, and then the interaction between the two of them, that was the original inspiration. And it, as far as Frank being alive, I was just sitting at a meeting somewhere, kind of a little bored.
It's
And I was
always
just
where it is.
I was just thinking through the thing, and suddenly, I don't know, out of the blue, said, "What if Frank didn't die that night? What if he was, when he got thrown down the stairs? What if he didn't break his neck?" Oh, whoa!
Very
And
cool.
then,
And you mentioned that you also had Lily dead in a previous draft too. So when Sarah said, "Oh, I watched my mother die in front of me," was that part true?
no, that again, that was another note I forgot. From a screenplay contest, was it would Sarah came in saying, "I've run away from home to be with you," and that it was much more interesting that if she told this great big lie that her mother was dead.
Mm.
So I took that suggestion and ran with it. It seemed like a really good suggestion, and helped create her character. And it's really hard it was really difficult to get her into the house. The struggle between the two of them was always a challenge, and so that helped make it a little more reasonable that he would let her in.
Yeah, one thing I really liked about, especially that first scene, but overall, is just the innate conflict between Sarah and Frank. It's not just like what they're doing opposes, it's their ideologies and their thoughts on the entire thing that oppose each other. So that was a really, really interesting part of the script. Did you have any thoughts or visions of who would play these characters as you were writing them? Did you have any mental image or any attitude image?
No, I don't do that. I know some people cast them in their heads and they think
Mm-hmm.
of famous actors and stuff like that. Maybe I'm too superstitious to do that, but no, I just really try to let their voice come through. And um, I'm very intuitive as a writer, and I'm more or less just like the story tells itself to me. Once the once the mechanics are out of the way, once the structure is in place, if it's good, then once I knew Frank was still alive, then oh, okay, he starts talking what he and the whole idea. Oh, he would have this monkish existence, wouldn't he? He would live the same. He would almost be in Groundhog Day. Every day like of his would be the same. And then, oh, what if he had to reset the stage somehow, or else Ben gets angry? You know, those little thoughts come along, and just following them out to the end.
When you're writing these dialogue heavy characters, especially back when
Mhm.
you're doing it as a playwright, do you
Yeah.
tend to think of someone that you know and create a voice that way? Or do you hear the characters themselves and kind of follow
I
down
just,
a path?
I just hear them. You know, uh, the dialogue itself. I don't write very consciously. It's you know, it's not like it's somewhat like taking dictation. Yeah, I know the points they have to hit, but the actual words that they use, I just tend to be more intuitive about that.
Of course. So let's move on to the discussion, which again,
Mhm.
thank you for listening.
Mhm.
Was there anything that really stood out or resonated with you that we came up with?
Yeah, like the actors really wanting more from the Frank and Sarah relationship, and
Hmm.
in the you know, in your I think it was your point that it really should hurt when they separate. So there needs to be more of a relationship there, and so I'm I that just it just makes total sense that. And I just, you know, in the next draft, I'll be looking at how can I make their relationship deeper. Part of the challenge with that is that you know, nights the days repeat, so I don't want to add a bunch of extra days in the middle of the script. So somehow I want to be able to get a deeper relationship than there is now without adding a lot more. um, I wouldn't be afraid of more screen time, but more another day or 2 days would mean another, unless perhaps, you know, they say Ben doesn't come every night, so maybe they could have another day or two, and they just wait to see if there's going to be any noises, and there are not any noises that night. Huh.
That could definitely be a fun tension building moment.
Right. And then that could leave some room for, you know, for the thing to breathe a little more.
Hmm. One of the suggestions I believe was just
Mm.
adding some minor conflicts in there between the two that aren't really related to the main plot, but are
To the
still
A
ways
story.
for them to
Yeah.
like spend more time together and be working towards a goal of some sort. So I thought
Yeah.
that was one very interesting thing, and
Right.
I loved the newspaper clippings. And so I want to talk a little bit more about those and how you came up
Right.
with that. But the fact that we don't see them actually on screen, like Sarah arrives with the clippings or knowing about the clippings, doesn't she?
Hmm. She does. She found those in her mother's house when she found the picture with the sister, you know, the two sisters. But I took the notes, and I was thinking, you know, imagining that I could have Frank having them hidden in a drawer, and then while Sarah is, you know, one time when Frank is asleep or something, or Frank is somewhere else, she could be rifling through his stuff. That would be something that she would do, and she could come across those, and we could see the headlines there.
Yeah, it would be more of a tension building thing. It would be more of a reveal rather than
Yeah,
exposition.
right.
That's
So I
fun.
think that's a good note. I'm taking away from this too.
Good. So you mentioned that right now, she found it in her mom's house. And I want to
Yeah.
know what was happening right before we actually meet Sarah in the story. Was she planning to run away? Was this an impulsive thing? How much did she plan or how much did she
She,
take?
I imagine that she was searching through her mother's closet or whatever. She finds this information, and her mother has always said, "You and I are each other's only family."
Hmm.
And that lie just sticks in Sarah's craw, and she just can't bear that. So she becomes very self-righteous, and then she does her research and yeah, so how does Sarah know to go to Frank if she doesn't see it in the clippings? That'll be a challenge.
That is definitely another piece of the puzzle that's going to have to be found.
Right, but she right now I imagine that she just can't bear the lie that and the mystery, and she wants to find out about this family that she feels she's been cheated out of, this whole uncle and this whole side of the family that she's been told doesn't exist.
I would feel self-righteous if I found that out too.
Right. Hopefully it's something that people can feel and understand.
Was there anything you heard in the discussion that you had either thought about before and had already dismissed, or something you want to add pushback to?
You know, I've heard the wanting to lengthen, like adding another moment to the end of the screenplay. That's the one, adding another beat
Mm-hmm.
at the end to instead of just that. That's one. I'm not dismissing it. I got that somewhere else too. That's not. That note came from someone else as well, and I'm having more trouble wrapping my head around what to actually do
Mm-hmm.
and not make it be an anticlimax.
Definitely. There's definitely a balance you have to strike there.
Yeah.
Have you thought about it before, or what led to the decision of ending right at the peak of the height of tension?
Right. I just like when everything has been resolved, the story is over,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I was going for. But I can understand, and some of that comes from the fact that earlier speech that she was giving to about how the girl grows up and the girl is taken in and taken care of. She was actually giving that speech to a ghost, or maybe to someone who doesn't exist. No, she was talking about a dead mother instead of
Mm-hmm.
a live mother.
Right.
So maybe I need to, sometimes these earlier drafts stick in your head and things get stuck. So maybe I need to, you know, really think about, because I imagine that her mother is actually listening to her say this. Her mother, yeah, did her, I don't. But when I heard the reading, I didn't see that stage direction. I wondered if I left that out. That the mother was hearing this being said.
I don't seem to remember that, but it could be that we just glossed over it too quickly and it didn't really hit an impact.
Or I could have erased the wrong line.
So, what would you imagine would happen if Sarah walks out of that bedroom and sees Frank at the stairs?
Well, I had imagined that Frank died this time.
Mm-hmm. And we were
You
wondering that
know,
too, because we really
yeah,
see like
but
the imagery there, but no actual definitive
I know
statement.
I should have. If I'm going to go that route, I'm going to have to make that clearer.
Mm-hmm.
But to, more like he sacrifices himself for his son. But I don't know. That seems a little melodramatic now. I'm a little lost in that. I must admit. I'm going to have to sleep on that one.
All part of the writing process.
Yeah.
We did think a few times that he died right there, and so it wouldn't be a bad direction to go. I think the imagery is what is really striking, of finally seeing his son face to face, and
Yeah.
actually walking for the first time up the stairs just to reach that pinnacle. And he is
Mm.
walking upstairs, which is very commonly a motif used for going into heaven, and so
That's
everything is
true.
there.
True. Yeah, that's true.
But then the tension and drama between the two characters would come to a head and then be released in all this anxious, pent up anger that we had between these two bickering all the time could actually
Mm,
come to like a cathartic end. So there's a lot of different ways you could go here that would
yeah.
make for a satisfying ending. And I think that's actually a testament to how well you've set the pieces up that multiple endings would feel satisfying.
Thank you.
So let's say you're sitting down, blank page, brand new draft, you're starting from square one.
Mhm.
What is one of the top things in your head that you are going to make different with this next draft? How are you going to attack it?
I'm I'm going to, well, first of all, I would never go with a blank draft, but that you just scared the life out of me. Um, I would I would immediately jump to the middle of it, the section where Frank and Sarah is, and I would start um, scouring their relationship, and I would look for signs, things that are working and build, saying I want to build a relationship so that it hurts when Sarah's sent away.
Mm-hmm.
That it's, I got good advice sometime that each rewrite should have one major goal in mind, and so my next goal would be Frank and Sarah's relationship.
Mm-hmm. Do you
And
have
so
any? Yeah, go ahead.
no, so I would cut the anything that felt like it wasn't leading in that direction, and I would look for ways to add. Like I said, maybe you can grab another day or two if there's some nights in which things are peaceful.
Do you have any inklings or ideas ruminating about what might be used to fill that time when there's nothing actually happening? Maybe they're
Yeah,
waiting for it, or even during the day before the night comes. Any ideas of
right,
what
right.
might be going on, or just whatever
I
is popping in your head right now?
I think that the suggestion of her helping him set things and becoming his assistant, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
That's some business they could do. And I don't know, maybe she cleans up some things, like, that some places in the kitchen or something. And maybe he begins to let her cook something for him more than just he's been eating, so that she actually functions for him. And then, I mean, that he actually lets down his guard a little bit. And then I would have to think the challenge is going to be what would they talk about?
Mm-hmm.
These are people with each of them having huge secrets, and they can't. So there's lots they can't talk about. So trying to find the things that they can talk about, that would be a challenge. Maybe he would show her some of his old videos, or
Oh, that would be great.
she
You
would
do
find an old
plant
tape.
them like in very,
Yeah,
very early in the script, like in the
yeah,
first, five or so pages. You plant that.
yeah.
That would be an excellent callback.
No, thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just spitballing here, and maybe they could look at that, and because she would be absolutely fascinated by home movies, and so she could see Ben, and we could see Frank soften a little bit about Ben, because he's of two minds about him. He he loves the younger Ben, but uh, he has much more complicated feelings about the older Ben that he sent away and that came home that night.
That would be a scene of raw emotion because Frank seems to go through these videos occasionally, at least. And
Yeah,
so him reminiscing about the time that he once had, but also Sarah, if her goal here is to, meet the family that she's never met, then seeing a video of
yeah,
Ben could be a really heavy hitting moment for her.
right, right. And I know, some of the critique in the was that they wanted the actors wanted to know more about what Frank's wedding, Frank's marriage was like.
That's right.
So maybe there's some room in the videotape to show like the wedding of the, he would certainly have a wedding tape.
Definitely. And Catherine could make an appearance in those. I believe Sarah doesn't have anything with Catherine in the script. She doesn't see her. She doesn't converse with her. Is that right?
Right. I think so. I
That
think
could
that's
be
true.
another interesting character relationship that could be
Mhm.
inspected a little bit.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's a great idea. I think your also point of rummaging around and finding the newspaper clippings is a great thing to juxtapose, because that is something Frank doesn't want and will cause conflict.
Right.
Whereas watching these videos is something that Frank seems to enjoy doing and could cause create peace between the two. So having a
Right.
hard back and forth there would make for a very conflict driven narrative between these two.
She does the same behavior, snooping both times.
Mm-hmm.
But the first, but as they're getting to know each other better, he softens about it, and it produces a different result the second time. Yeah, it could show a softening relationship.
Amazing. Aside from this script, what else do you have coming up? What's on the horizon for you?
Well, I'm in the middle of working on a romantic comedy right now, and I'm like four drafts in and feeling pretty good about it.
Okay, very good. Do you want to give us a log line to this, or is this still much under wraps?
Yeah, this is still too fresh.
Very good.
I don't want to talk about it, but I'm enjoying the writing process there, and it's giving me, I think, some needed space from what the night leaves behind, so I can come back to it with fresh eyes.
Absolutely. What's it like writing a comedy? How does it differ from
Uh,
this very much thriller ghost story?
I think that horror and comedy are both really much more similar than most people think, in that they are almost geometrical. In you know, you a good, I don't know how to express this theory of mine that comedy is like math and like logic. You set up you set up a logical fallacy, and then you break it. In horror, and you set up, you have to be really strict in following through on your premise, or else you blow the whole thing up. And the same thing with comedy there. So I find them more similar than not. And I'm not trying to write a lot of joke lines. I'm trying to let the humor rise out of the situation. So it's not like a sitcom where there have to be three good jokes on a page. It's just more like just letting them arise out of a situation that's ridiculous.
Very good. I saw on your cover flight even mentioned the desire to write horror scripts. And so, how did the decision to go to a comedy, even though you do see them as very
Yeah.
similar, the emotion that the audience has is very different. And so, what caused that shift in your head?
This is the one I'm working on right now. It's an old script that never worked.
Oh yeah.
And so one day I thought, oh, it's similar to like that moment when Frank didn't die. It's like, oh, wait a minute. What if the beginning happened this way? Oh my God. Okay. And so it suddenly became alive. It's a script that's like 8 or 9 years old. It
Hmm.
was just sitting there, and it was bugging me because every so often I think, oh, it's got a great third act. I know this will work. But the first act doesn't work. And so what can I do so I wasn't starting completely from scratch, but again, changing the first act changes everything.
Definitely.
So it really felt like writing a new script. I just got to include. I already knew where it was going, and I already had some stuff to pull from for the third act.
Excellent. Well, Rob Sheely, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with me. I think it's been very fruitful. I truly enjoyed reading your script. I don't know if I've read in the past 2 years a script as many times as I've read this one in preparation for everything we've been doing. And so it's been a real joy to live with
Well,
your
thank you.
words. And
Thank you so much, Stephen.
absolutely. And you are always welcome back on the show in the future times. If you have this script, the next one, or anything else that you want in consideration, we will take it in with open arms. You've been a delight.
All right. Good night.
Thank you so much.